Hello and welcome to Adventures in Visibility. Today, my special guest and I are going to be talking about how you can successfully launch a podcast. I'm Denise Wakeman, your host and guide to better visibility on the web, and today I am so excited to be speaking with Jason Weiser. He recently launched, or as I saw him say somewhere, that he relaunched his podcast, and he did a fabulous job. So we're going to find out today what he did and maybe some ways that you can model that so when you're ready to launch your own podcast, you'll know what to do. So welcome, Jason. Thank you for being with me today. I'm so excited to talk with you. Finally.
I am excited to talk to you, and I see Stefan Havnanian's here, and so he knows the inside on how badly I've been wanting to meet Denise Wakeman, and so I'm really honored to be here. It's kind of a funny little inside joke between Stefan and
I. Oh, okay, well, here I am, and here you are, and and we're going to be talking about, this topic is so hot. People are jumping on the podcasting bandwagon like crazy now, and which makes me kind of laugh because in 2005 I started a podcast, and there's a few people out there who did the same, and so it's kind of like podcasting, like been there, done that. But now it's taken off finally, and I'm happy about that. So let us talk about your podcast. And the first thing I want to ask you about really is to get a little background, because while we're talking about podcasting today, your show is based on your Hangout on Air show, Get on Track, Stay on Track. Isn't that correct?
Yep, that's right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the main thing, let's start with, like, why did you decide to make it a podcast too? Because a lot of people are having that question, like, I do an HOA show, should I do a podcast? Is it the same? That sort of thing. So before we learn how you launched it, what made you decide to turn yours into a podcast?
Well, curiously enough, the On Track Tips itself, as an HOA, it was born out of the fact that I don't really see myself as a very good blogger when it comes to writing content. So I thought this would be the quick and easy way to create content. That's what everybody was saying. Oh, you're not a good blogger? Just go ahead and do it in HOA and do it on video, and it'll be easy. Okay, well. It wasn't easy, but it was different, But and so then the next logical step, of course, was to repurpose that content. And largely what I do in my company and with my clients is we're always trying to find the best marketing channel for the business, right? And so
right.
A lot of what I do now with like repurposing is proof of concept. So even though, like, my podcast, I love what has happened for me and what I've seen in my podcast, but I'll tell you the truth, when I went into it trying to say, how do I do a podcast? What do I need to know about it so that I can help my clients decide, should I do a podcast? And then, of course, there was some wonderful residuals of that. People started subscribing and signing up, and I was like, oh, wow, hey, people actually enjoy my show, so that's really kind of cool. And it really just started out as proof of concept, so.
Excellent. I'm totally behind you and with you on that whole repurposing thing and how to find the best content for the topic, for the audience. And I've been doing the same thing as you. I've been doing Adventures in Visibility for about a year and a half now. And it was just very natural for me to strip and get the recording and start posting that on my blog as well. Why aren't I putting this into iTunes? But, so it's a great way to create more content. So you said that you actually relaunched your podcast. So why don't you tell us why we're not talking about launching, but relaunching your podcast?
Yeah, interesting. So the first time I had launched it, again, it was proof of concept. I just needed to learn, what does it take to launch a podcast? I had a couple clients that needed to learn and needed to know, had some questions, so okay, let's figure this thing out. And so I just kind of launched it. I had 10 episodes, I put it out there, and I was getting, a couple hundred downloads a month. And I was like, wow, okay, this is pretty cool. I had no idea what was good, what is bad, so it just felt good to me. And And then I was talking with a couple different podcasters. In fact, one woman that I had on my show, Chris Gilbertson, she put out a product, How to Launch a World-Class Podcast. And then, cheese. No. You're taking pictures? Yeah. And then I was talking with Ryan Hanley also about podcasting. And if anybody is not following Ryan Hanley's podcast, you should. He does a great job. And Ryan and I are good friends, and we started talking about I asked him, well, how important is it to really get into this new and noteworthy thing? Because I didn't know anything about it, right? So that was the one catalyst that made me think, okay, again, proof of concept, how important is it? Great, let me relaunch it, and let me compare the two launches against each other and see if there's really anything to this. I mean, is this, everybody's talking about new and noteworthy and why it's so valuable and why you have to consider it, and okay, well, let's see. Let's not just take everybody's word for it. Let's actually put the same podcast through the same process and see what results we get. So, and we'll talk a little bit about the results later.
Okay, perfect. So you decided to to host a podcast party for your launch, and that was intriguing because you also included contests with that. So talk about that decision, because very often most people, when they launch, they just put out a bunch of information on social media and that's the end of it. So what was the thinking behind really doing a long term, because it was about a month that you worked on this launch? What was the thinking behind that?
Yeah, so this is where I'm going to start to kind of babble and some of the stuff that I've kind of prepared. Okay. So just if I start to go on too long, you or anybody in the comment stream say, "Whoa, slow down there, hothead," and let's get reel it in here, fire hose. Okay, so what I want to encourage everybody in anything that you do online, whether it's your website, your social media, your email marketing, or a podcast, first thing you have to ask yourself is why, right? Not why do I need a website? Why do you need a website? Well, because everybody says I need a website. No, you need to come up with a better answer than that. Why do I need a podcast? Well, it's going to give me more visibility in the podcasting community. No, you need to have a really good answer for that. And so once I understood why I wanted to have the podcast, then I needed to then I understood that I needed to get this extra traction with the relaunch. And so in this relaunch, what was important about the relaunch was this new and noteworthy that I wanted to proof of concept. So let's have this podcast launch party because we know some things. Well, we don't know, but we can really kind of speculate about some ways that you can get into new and noteworthy. Of course, iTunes is a very closed-wall community. They don't let people know about their algorithms. We have no idea what exactly determines that, but we see some indicators that are pretty clear across the board. Those indicators are things like reviews, things like subscribers, things like the number of downloads in a month. These are what Ryan, in a recent interview, in fact, just last week with Jay Baer, Ryan Hanley said a really great quote. He said his talks about velocity. In fact, his quote was, "Velocity of reviews and subscribers plays a huge element into the ability to game the system." And so this is really interesting. This is where we are now, all right? So why have a podcast launch party? Because ultimately, I'm gaming the system, all right? But let's break that down for a little bit, right? Because that sounds so negative and so derogatory. So I want to kind of look at that for a second. I mean, because what is it I'm doing with a podcast launch party? I want to get reviews. What is my call to action? I want to get reviews. I want to get subscribers. I want to get more downloads, right? So how am I going to do this? I'm going to hold a contest, and I'm going to incentivize people to take this action. What's the action? Write me a review, right? And so by incentivizing them, there is this sense of gaming that's taking place here. But this is where I want to kind of break it down and say to anybody out there first, before you go into a podcast, why are you doing it? Of course, new and noteworthy. So make sure that you understand from the beginning, right, that your marketing success is going to be determined by your mindset from the outset. Right? Going into this thing, where is your mindset? Why are you doing this? And if it is for the sake of getting into this 8 weeks of new and noteworthy, and that's the limit, that's the depth of your thinking, you're going to fail because you're going to look like this scummy, slimy marketer dude that's just out there trying to grab up a bunch of, I'm willing to trade coffee cups and T-shirts for reviews. It's just going to feel really kind of markety and slimy. But if you understand that it's...
Yep, yeah,
stop me.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to say that I really appreciate that comment you made about mindset, because, and then that segue into, because of course you're not slimy, and we don't want to appear slimy either. Those of us who are doing this for our livelihood, that's definitely, you don't want to be slimy. So, that is the mindset that this is for the long haul, which is what made that decision that it's not just for new and noteworthy. That's the first step, though.
Yeah, that's right. And so that's the other kind of way to do it. There's really two mindsets that you approach it. I approach it for new and noteworthy. I approach it for a strategy, for a long term, for engagement, for the purpose that this is just one piece of the puzzle, this new and noteworthy, this launch party, but the bigger part of this is all the energy and the excitement that you build around this launch party, right? That's when you start to get more engagement, because the launch party then becomes the focus of your marketing. You have a very laser-focused, clear marketing objective for that 4 weeks. Of course, you're going to probably be writing blogs and doing other things and hanging out on social media, but it's really nice to have that kind of anchor, that content anchor that you can wrap all of your other stuff around, your articles and your social media and your email marketing. I mean, you all can kind of anchor on this big party. And with party, now it's fun, and now your subscribers are like, this is fun, this is something new and exciting, and I mean, who doesn't love a party, right? So
exactly,
when you approach it like this, and that new and noteworthy isn't really the goal, and you're not focusing on the tips and the tricks and the tactics of being able to game new and noteworthy, even though mechanically that's really kind of what you're doing, but it's about your mindset. Okay, the horse is dead. I think we all get that, right? We can move on?
Okay, move on. Move on. What's the next step? I just get
really, I get passionate about this because I see it in so many other areas in marketing. We see people buying Fiverr gigs, selling Twitter followers, and we see people doing just all these different ways to game. Just work. Just go to work and be marketing and be in it for the long haul and stop trying to game things.
Right.
And, all right, there we go. That's a tangent.
Okay.
Rabbit trail. All right. So.
It's a great rabbit trail. I mean, you're speaking my language, so go for it.
So now we want to kind of get into. So now, where's the questions? Are people just too busy listening? I like to think, Denise, on my show when I'm on Trick Tips, I like to think that I'm just so dang interesting that people don't have time to write comments and chatter, in the stream.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, well, we're at some of the questions right now that I've got marked to bring up is that they're looking for really specific equipment and tactical things. So I think we can get to that in a little bit down the road. So let's keep focusing on like the why, the how, the goals, why that's important, and how your party worked. What were the elements of it, and so that people can take a look at that and say, oh, this is something I can do or that I don't want to do.
Okay, cool. So then let's go revisit real quickly then again, why is new and noteworthy so important? Because I think it really is pivotal. There's a lot of discussion going on about this, right? And for the most part, right, here's a little experiment. Go to Google and type in new and noteworthy, right? And all of the front page is going to be populated by articles that say how to get into new and noteworthy, 8 tricks to use to get into new and noteworthy. So what does this tell us? This tells us that this is what people are writing about because it's important. It's important to a lot of people to get there. Right? I wasn't able to come across many reasons as to why it's so important, so we just kind of have to think about that. Let's speculate at that. One of the things is that the little fish get to now swim with the big fish. So here was my podcast, and I was going to tell you my results at the end, but I'm going to slip it in now because it's appropriate to now. I was able to hit position number 9 on new and noteworthy in marketing and management category on iTunes. Now, who else is in there? You got John Lee Dumas, you got Pat Flynn, you got Lewis Howes. I mean, these are some big dogs, and I was outranking them for one day. So now I'm not going to categorically say it was all because of my launch party, but it certainly had an influence in it. The first time around, I wasn't there, right? The second time around, I made it to number 9, only for a day, but I made it there. So what can we hope to get from that new and noteworthy? Now we can hope that somebody is now looking on iTunes on the day that you're in there in the new and noteworthy, right, section. So now that you're in there, you're getting that visibility, right? So you get a chance to be a better exposure to an audience that is outside of your normal audiences, right? Mm-hmm. Now, we understand that the podcast community is a very what's a good way to say it? They're okay, so you can have your social media community, you've got your email community, you got your blogging community, but the podcasters are just fierce loyalists. Let's call them that.
Yes.
You know what I mean? If you want to listen
agree.
to people that listen to podcasts are just like fierce. I'm going to listen to So once you hook that person, hook them and engage them, whatever word you want to use there. They'll be with you for life. I mean, that's my experience anyway. When I go to the gym, I listen to a podcast. There's only a couple that I ever choose from. There are ones that I really like. I don't have a whole lot of time to listen to a ton of different podcasts, so I've got my core group of them. So your goal then is to get there. And New and Noteworthy, I think, has that ability to get you in front of somebody, and once you're in front of them, they will be with you. You know, somebody that's going to be with you for a long time. And the last thing I want to say about that is New and Noteworthy only last 8 weeks. And something you want to make sure to think about in your launch party. So in this 8 weeks, and after that, then you kind of get pushed back over into the what's hot section, or hopefully you can end up there. You know, but there's thousands and thousands of podcasts out there. So you just, that first 8 weeks is really important time to find and gain that momentum, right?
Let me ask you. Can I ask you a question about this 8-week time period?
Sure.
Is that from the date that you post your first podcast episode, or from the date you first hit New and Noteworthy?
I can't. I don't know. I don't know. Again, iTunes is such a closed wall. We just have the speculation, and we just see this number. You know, when I read the people that I respect that are teaching about podcasting, we just see 8 weeks appear often. I don't know. I don't know when that is.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but
it's something I've been curious about.
Yeah. I wish I knew. There's people out there that I'm sure probably have a better, more data they can better speculate at that. But because iTunes certainly doesn't have it printed on their front page, so we can't know. We can't really know.
Okay. So for your party, you said that you were, giving away prizes. Because that was kind of a way to incentivize people to leave a review. So did you have a budget that you had put together for that? How did you decide on what to give away?
Yeah, that's great. I had a budget about halfway through, and then it overwhelmed me. I got so far into it, and that would be one of the things that I would say, absolutely pick your budget. Denise, I got this idea. I kind of threw it out there. I threw it together. I spent maybe about 2 weeks planning it. I really wished I would have spent a month or even more planning this thing. This I would say to everybody, because then you can make a real budget. The budget I made was like, I could afford an extra, $500. Let me try it. Let me see what happens. And sure, it's a good experiment. I can come up with some great content from it. I can validate that spend right now. And I went over that budget by twice. I ended up spending about $1,000. between the cups and the T-shirts and the shipping, which I didn't even think about. Oh yeah, shipping, and then my grand prize, and then my staff members to be able to kind of do all this extra work, because who's going to do all this packaging and shipping and mailing labels? And I mean, that's a lot of extra work. And I didn't figure that into the budget initially. So
good point.
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing it yourself, then your budget now isn't a monetary consideration; it's a time consideration. So you do have that extra time to budget in to be able to do all those things that you're going to need to do to be able to reward people,
right.
Pay your debts, because now people have. So.
Did you do any advertising, paid advertising for the party?
I wish I had more time. I put the advertising in place, right? So let's talk about that for a second, because it segues greatly into that. And I want to come back to prizes too in a minute. So make sure I'm going to leave it up to you to ask me about prizes. But I think the landing page process is a very important process to think about. Okay. I'm going to put a link into the sidebar right now, and I don't know what kind of a lag we have or not, but I've got a link here. Let's see. So the first landing page looked like this. It's just ontracktips.com podcast minus launch minus party or dash launch dash party. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to throw that link into the chat right now. Anybody can pull that up, and I could probably pull that up on the screen also, just to see it.
Okay. I also have the link that I can post later too.
Do you? Okay. So,
yeah.
So what we have here is it's a squeeze page landing page. Notice I took off any other buttons, my other regular navigation. I made all that disappear. The only option, if you wave your mouse all around here, I give you one option, one choice, and that is to either use my social warfare from warfare plugins share buttons, or I use my enter to win. That's it. That's your only choices on this page, right? And on this page, you talked about paid advertising. There is an RTB pixel. So that's my first goal, right? Let's have a one landing page, my first initial goal, tell people a little bit about what they're getting into, show a little bit about the products, but do not have any other call to action or any other thing on the page except this enter to win. So now I've accomplished step one, RTB pixel. So now I can leverage Facebook and retargeting. For anybody that doesn't know what that is, look up RTB pixel. So then the next step, of course, they think, okay, well, there's nothing else I can do on the page. I either leave or I enter to win. Okay, so let me push the button and enter to win, and now I can see that there's more information happening here. Again, some more information about what the prizes are, the T-shirts. We gave away this Sony headset and the cups. But then initially, now this is something I want to talk about, call to action, and I don't have a definitive answer on this. Initially, I only had one call to action, leave a review. Because that's all I wanted people to do. Again, why am I doing it? New and Noteworthy. How do I get into New and Noteworthy? Leave a review, sign up, subscribe, download my podcast, right? Well, the problem that happened here with leave a review is in iTunes, many people, they use these nicknames, right? So I'd get, instead of Denise Wakeman, I've got really awesome chick. And I don't know who really awesome chick is. I could guess, but I really don't know who that is, particularly. So now you have to, how do you communicate with them? I can't get their email. I don't know who they are. So, but my offer is, if you leave a review, you will get entered into this grand prize drawing, right? Which I put their name on a spreadsheet and did a drawing live. I'll get to that in a minute. So that's a big problem right there that you guys need to think about. Figure out some way, and I haven't solved it. You have to figure out some way that if leaving a review is your way of getting them into the entry, then they need to be able to match their ID to their email address so that you can now communicate with them. So what I did then is I realized, oh man, this isn't going to work, and it was too late. I'm in week 1 or 2 now, because week 1 I discovered it. So week 2 I went and I added, all right, we'll give you a second choice. Let's just enter to win. Let's you can sign up on my newsletter. So now, hey, this is cool. Now I'm getting a lead capture as well. Well, awesome. But the problem here is now I'm splitting my call to action, right? Now the purpose of my podcast is no longer getting reviews and subscriptions and downloads, but now the purpose of my podcast launch party is lead capture, which I of course could then turn into a call to action through the email marketing, but it's many more steps down the line, right? So are they going to? Well, no, because all you have to do to enter to win now is give me your email, but then to win you have to answer the secret question, right? This sounds really great. I thought it was the most brilliant thing. Enter the secret question. So you got to open up the email newsletter. In each email newsletter, there's going to be 3 secret questions, and then during my weekly HOAs, run it for 4 weeks. Remember, we've got 8 weeks to get in New and Noteworthy. Use those first 4 weeks to be able to really promote. Don't do a once and done thing. That's huge. Let this podcast party last a couple weeks. The 4th week, we're going to give this thing away. So now every week, I'm saying, go ahead and the first person to type in such and such into the comment stream. Well, now we've got some challenges there too. We've got lag. We've got how do we know who was the first person, the last person, and it turned out to be really challenging. Like, oh man. Fortunately, my community was really friendly, really cool, and nobody there was no black eyes or bloody. Nobody left because they were offended. That's fortunately. But I can imagine with somebody with a list like the size of yours or Jay Bear's or somebody with a substantial list. That maybe isn't as intimate of a community, not to suggest anything, but you know what I mean. My list is so small. I mean, it's intimate. There's just, I mean, it's very intimate. But I wish it was bigger. But anyway, so now what you have to do is you have to click on the button, sign up, and now you have to show up at the HOA. So now I'm thinking, cool. Now not only am I getting people to give a review, now I'm also getting a lead capture, and I'm forcing people to go to my HOA. So now I'm promoting my HOAs, and I quickly realized my call to action has just gone right out the door. This thing is spinning out of control real quick, right? So just some things to consider. Take time in the beginning hand to plan this stuff out. But I tell you, I don't know if even after listening to this, I think you're still going to have these. Of course, you're going to have these mistakes as you move through it. You're not going to. You got to just try it to figure it out.
Right.
Let me take a deep breath.
Well, yeah, you take a deep breath, and I'm just going to say one of the major points I'm getting here is that you've got to be able to turn and pivot. During something like this, you cannot be so married to what your original plan was that you're not taking into consideration challenges, or that there might be a better way to do it, because sometimes you don't know until you're in it. So being able to adapt really quickly is a key thing from what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, yeah, I think it really is. And again, continuing to go back to that why. Why am I having this party? What are the goals I'm trying to accomplish? And as that pivot happens, redefine those goals. So now I'm getting people on my email list, more people, which is great, but now I had to make sure to kind of readjust the way that I was sending out my newsletters. And I'll tell you, I got tripped up there. It's one of the areas that I struggle with in my business. I'm good at teaching about newsletters and understanding how they do, and many of my clients have very successful newsletters, but myself, I had a little bit of trouble with that. So it was quite a pivot for me.
Okay. We're about at the bottom of the half hour, but I would like to just get in a couple of questions. And if it's okay with you, go maybe 10 minutes or so, a little bit longer, if you have the time.
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So we've had this question from a couple of people, and I know this doesn't relate specifically to your launch, but several people have mentioned this, and because they're doing what you're doing. They've got a HOA, and they want to make it into a podcast. It's what I'm doing. It's what you're doing. It's what Ryan Hanley is doing. It's what lots of people are doing, as far as I can tell. And it's a great strategy. So can you share a little bit about, take a little bit of a break from then we'll come back to the launch stuff and talk about that, what is required to do that transfer?
Sure, it's really simple here, right? You got two choices, I think. If you're starting with an HOA, the first thing that you can do, of course, it's automatically populated over to YouTube, right? So log into your YouTube, go to your video manager inside of YouTube, and go to your video, and there's an option for you there to be able to download as MP4. And either you can do it, or if you have team managers, this is what I do. One of the guys from my team, he goes in, he downloads the MP4, strips the audio, and then I have somebody else that then takes that audio, and I put through using Audacity. You put a bumper on the front, a bumper on the back that are already pre-recorded and wrapped, and then that kind of that's real simple. Now, if you don't have direct access for whatever reason, then you can also use Firefox. Has download helper is, I think, the app that you can use over there to download any audio, strip any audio from YouTube. So you can start with that. Then once that's done, then of course now you have this MP3 piece of MP3, and then you need to upload that, turn it into a feed on your site. There's a couple different things that you can do with that. But I did want to go back to a point early on that once I see a lot of people dropping here. Like, I've gone through all this effort to make this MP3, and then I just put it on iTunes. Well, go the next mile, because it's really not that much more work to get it onto Blueberry and Stitcher and SoundCloud. SoundCloud's a little bit more, but you've got this MP3 now. It's made. Put it out there, and go that extra mile then.
Yeah. Well, and I noticed that you also add it to your show notes as well. So, and I think that that's important as well, is because then in one place on your site you have that option for your audience to get it however they want.
Yeah, on my blog post, that's again proof of concept, and I want to make sure that I don't care what it is you consume. Do you consume it by video? Do you consume it by audio? Or do you consume it by like to read it? I want all of those options available right there for my audience, for my blog.
So do you offer the transcript of your show?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's the two things I've worked on with that. One, I've tried a couple different outsourced companies to get a transcript, but oftentimes that literal transcript doesn't read well, and so it's not a lot of fun. So you have to either rewrite it yourself or outsource that, and that's been the biggest challenge for me, particularly for a 30-minute Hangout on Air, is to find somebody that can really condense that into a piece of content that can read comfortably without turning out to be this 1,250, 1,500 word epic post, which mine tend to be. And some people like it, some people don't. Some people like this, 750 word posts.
Right. Okay, so going back to the launch of the podcast, you had mentioned a process map. What is that, and how does that work for you?
I'm sorry, Denise, forgive me. I was reading Sally Sue Erber's questions, and Sally, I want to apologize to you first of all for getting a little bit too techie. So I'm glad that you kind of put the brakes on that for us. And I want to say that it's probably best to talk to somebody if you're not familiar with terms like MP4s and MP3s and some of the different platforms. It's a little bit beyond the scope of the conversation right now, so I do apologize for that. But bumpers, all bumpers is just that audio little sound at the beginning. The little diddy da, or somebody that says, hi, my name is Jason Weiser, and you're listening to Get on Track, Stay on Track, and whatever, that video bumper thing. Do you know how I do that little radio?
Yeah, I like that. All
that. Right, it's fun. So, all right. Anyways, and ask your question again, Denise.
Yeah. You had talked about a process map for the launch. So how does that work? What do you mean by process map?
Yeah, just very simply, try to get down as many conditions. Okay, start with your beginning. Why am I doing this? Which will then help you define your objective, new and noteworthy, and then determine all the pieces in between there. So that in that process, as I started to walk through that, I was able to determine what does my landing page have to look like? How do I send that? When I send this out to social media, what link am I sending out? Where do I want people to land? What am I talking about? And even during the Hangout on Air, how am I going to be incorporating that into my weekly HOAs? What does that sound like in terms of a link or a call to action? So just map those steps out. And again, I think it's a little bit too much to get into the details of it. Anybody that wants to know privately, I'd be more than happy to talk to anybody on the side and get as nerdy as you want.
I think you've got a class here, that you could offer. It sounds like there's plenty of people who want all those details, and I understand that because it isn't just it's not hard, any of this stuff, my experience, but there are a lot of steps.
Well, as a result
of this, getting back to the launch.
Well, let me say real quickly too, Denise, that as a result of this, in my company, Wiser Sites, I've got a number of helpers, outsourcers, VAs, whatever you call them, and we have, through this whole process, we've created a process map where literally I go on air, I do my Hangout, and then all of my assistants do their parts and pieces. One person is doing graphics, another person is tweeting, another person is copying and stripping the podcast and getting it up, and another person is writing descriptions. And it's so streamlined now that it's just all I have to do is turn on my mic, get on air, and start talking. And I love it. And that I will be giving a class on that process because it learned a lot.
Well, that's a beautiful thing too. I like that. So let's talk about then, as we're closing up here, is like what worked, what did not work, and what did you learn? You provoked me with this statement that you were going to share the few things that the experts were claiming in their product pitches that on the surface seemed to make sense, but in reality turned out to be hype. That is what I want to know.
Yeah. So, one of the things I read was or saw actually was if you do it right, if you do your launch part, let me read it for my note. If you do your launch party correctly, everyone will share a selfie of their prize, and that will give you added exposure. That's simply not the case. Okay, and which is an interesting thing. What is your prize, right? I was giving away hosting, coffee cups, and T-shirts, and my T-shirts are these red T-shirts. Not everybody looks good in red. A lot of people, very few people, took a picture of themselves in red, right? But nobody had problem holding up a coffee cup and going ee. So think about that. If you want people doing selfies or whatever, give them something that they can not have to feel silly wearing a big red T-shirt, right? Another thing that was this quote here: a successful launch party will improve your Google SEO because, quote, podcasting is the new SEO. Podcasting will keep you consistently on page 1 of Google for your keywords. And this is where we go, false. There is certainly some SEO value, I'm sure, woven in there. But again, if you go into this contest thing with even this tiniest little piece of SEO like objective, you're going to end up being that slimy marketer dude. I mean, if it's residual, if it happens, fine. Yes, you want to do, pay attention to keywords. Yes, there are some things you want to be aware of, but I tell you what, just write SEO on a piece of paper, wrinkle it up, and burn it. Throw it away, because that's not what we're doing here. Here we're doing a podcast launch party. Having fun, making friends, celebrating, party hats, blowing those little things that go like that you can, hit the end of your wife's nose. Oh, she cracks up. Okay. The last one is that the better your prize is, the more likely that people are going to leave a review. And this seems on the surface great. Yeah, pick a really good prize, $600 pair of, whatever, But the reality is we had a nice prize. It's about a $125 headset. And I had more people talk to me private message like, Jason, all you have to do is ask me to write a review, and I will. I like you. I like what you do. You give a lot of stuff away. Your content is great stuff. So just ask me, and I'll do it. You don't have to give me this headset. So that was really kind of was an eye opener to me on this whole giving away and incentivizing with gifts. Who are you really speaking to? Because you're not speaking to your regular audience. You're not speaking to the people that have already been on your list. All I had to do to them was just send out one newsletter saying, hey, we're launching a podcast, and I had an overwhelming response of people saying, this is so cool, exciting, great. Now I get one more way to consume on-track tips. What can I do to help? Write a review. Great, done, boom. But who is this headset for? Who are the T-shirts and the cups? Well, it's for the joy, the excitement. It's for the celebration of the party, but it's really for people that you've never met before, people that are interested in things like winning cups and headsets. And the reality is those people are going to sign up to win the prize, but they're not going to stick around. They may, if you're good enough and you're engaging and it's the right niche and it works well and. But, so think about that. It's not about the prize. It's about the process, it's about the celebration, it's about the party.
I love that. So would you say that your launch party was successful and met your objectives?
I'm glad you asked that, because yes, it did. Again, my objective was proof of process. I learned a lot about what not to do. In fact, I know more than anybody on this call about what not to do when launching a podcast party, right? I have, but okay. So what did we really get out of it? I got about 24 reviews in the first 4 weeks. I did end up at number 9, so that was a success there. Number 9 in the marketing category. I quickly fell out of there. Didn't stay there very long. Had about 50 new subscribers to my newsletter over the 4 weeks. Now, how many of those stuck around? I can't really tell you that, but that was an exciting little surge. Again, I have a small list. I have an intimate community, so that was a fun little surge to see. My downloads, right? The first time, remember, I launched it once, and then I relaunched it. My first time, I was getting a few hundred a month, and then during that podcast party and the month after that, I was getting a few thousand, right? So, nice. I mean, when you try to compare yourself against guys like John Lee Dumas, 120,000 a month, I mean, just don't do that. Right? To me, it was a 10x result. And I think if you get a 10x result in anything, yeah, that's a success, right? So now let's go back to budget.
Okay, let's go back to budget.
That wasn't a success. So but hey, you know what? We learn, we move on, and now I'll be able to recoup that by the training and the resources I'm going to be able to give to other people. So
right. And what would you do differently then? One or two things that you would do differently next time, or when you're advising new clients.
Plan ahead. I already said it before, but I'll say it again. Plan ahead, map it out, decide what they are, define your guidelines. One thing I ran into, I have an international community. I didn't realize how international my following was on On-Track Tips until I started offering things and realized, hold it, I can't ship to Spain and to Hungary and to across to India, and so I would write very clear guidelines. Who will you send these prizes to? I would have chosen different prizes. The T-shirts don't work; they weren't well received. Coffee cups, very well received, and something small like that. And I would also have been more. I grabbed the RTB, or I dropped the RTB Pixel. I wish I would have used that. I think I could have gone a lot further had I been prepared and ready for that. You can do Facebook campaigns on $1 a day, so they say, right? And I think that I could have really gotten a lot more traction if I would have just finished it. I started a lot of things and I birthed a lot of great ideas, but if I would have had just a little bit more energy and resource and time, I think I would have been able to bundle it together and really knock it out of the park.
Okay, so one more question before the final question, and that is, what's happened since the podcast party? So when the podcast remind us when the podcast party was, and then what has been the ongoing results afterwards.
Great. So I don't honestly remember when the podcast party was. I think it was about a month ago. It was. August. It was back in August 18th. And so since then, I've had very consistent downloads running in the thousands now. I just took a whole month off of my show because I've been traveling, and I plummeted. I plummeted down to about 50 downloads last month, right? So that spoke a lot. You need to, when you embark on this and you're going to put all this effort, you've got to have something in the bank. I wish I would have saved some podcasters in reserve for this rainy day. That would have been another mistake I wish I would have done. So I'm going to have to rebuild that momentum and get back up there, and hopefully I'll still see those same numbers again. So since then, I have seen a good resurgence. Now, the hardest thing about podcasts, though, is how do you, it's like saying, what's the ROI of social media? We get that question all the time. What's the ROI of a podcast? Well, it's very difficult to measure the actual direct traffic that came from that, because it is so visceral. It's so much about just getting in the mind and getting in the head of somebody while they're at the gym and they're driving, but there's no way for them, so I got 2,000 downloads. I don't know who those 2,000 people are. So there's a real disconnect there with the podcast, but we know, we see and we know, like we said, podcast followers are fierce loyalists. So I can't tell you exactly what's happened, except that I saw this huge spike in the number of people that are listening, and I would love to be able to somehow figure out how to connect, how to find those people and say, okay, great, I know you're listening, now let's connect on a different level, and yeah, of course, back to landing.
I guess that's the next step. Your calls to action will be to get on a special list, get a special gift or opportunity or something from you that gets them on your email list so you know who they are, right?
Yeah. It's it's another piece to the puzzle.
Yep. Okay, so my last question, which has nothing to do with podcasting unless your answer does, is what has been your most memorable adventure? Anything, from business to travel to life to whatever. Just give us a little peek behind the scenes about who you are, really, Jason.
Oh man. So I was traveling in Ukraine, and there was the OSCE. I don't know if anybody knows what OSCE is, but it's a type of a United Nations type thing. It's a group of 36 member states over here in Europe, and they were having this big meeting thing, and and the organization I was working with at the time was talking about child trafficking, and I was able to get a ticket to go to OSCE. And I looked over to my wife, and I was like, hey, how would you like to go have dinner with the president of Ukraine? And she, of course, laughed at me. You're crazy. You're not going to, what are you talking about? And sure enough, after a couple calls to some delegates from Holland that happened to know the organization that we were with, sure enough, I get these tickets in the mail that said, yeah, you're welcome to go and be a reporter. We had, nosebleed seats up in the other area, but I was able to meet some of the delegates, got to meet Senator Chris Smith, and at a luncheon, big luncheon party, and across the room was the president of Ukraine. Never got close enough to him, but we had dinner at the mayor's office, and the whole time my wife, who's Ukrainian, she's like looking at me like, she's like, I can't believe you did it. I can't believe we're here at the mayor's office having dinner with the president. So it was kind of fun. It was definitely the most bizarre adventure.
That's fun. I like that. Nobody's had one of those kinds of adventures yet that has talked about it on the show, so that's really cool. I like that. Sometimes, things just work out that way, that you get to, be up close and personal to those big wigs. Where can people find out more about you and, subscribe to your podcast and give you a review and all that stuff?
OnTrackTips.com. You can leave a review at OnTrackTips.com/iTunes. And right now, though, what I really would love, if I could just take 1 minute and pitch a new plugin that we just launched for WordPress. It's called WarfarePlugins.com, and we're going to make sure that the link is in the comments, if that's okay with you, Denise. Warfare
Sure.
Plugins helps you help your readers share your content the way that you want it shared. Custom Pinterest images, custom tweets, click-to-tweets. I mean, all these different plugins that are out there, we were able to mash them together into the most amazing social sharing plugin on the planet. So amazing, I guarantee you, 100% guarantee if you're not fully satisfied with it, write me an awful nasty letter and I'll give you your full money back. But I'm confident that very quickly we're going to see a ton of people saying, wow, social warfare, are you kidding me? Where have you been my whole life? So.
Okay. Oh, well, now you've got me intrigued. Social
Cool.
warfare.com, is that what you said?
WarfarePlugin.com. WarfarePlugins.com.
Okay, good. Don't want to say it wrong. Okay, So Jason, thank you so much for being my guest today. I know we could have talked about this for hours, and like I said, I think you've got a class that you've already got, people ready to sign up for the class. So, I hope we see that from you soon. I really appreciated hearing your story and talking with you today. So, thank you very much. Folks, you can get advance notice of next guests on Adventures in Visibility by going to adventuresinvisibility.com. I hope you'll join me. In December, I've got 2 special shows lined up, which you'll hear about when you get on the list. And I don't have them ready to announce yet, but they're getting there, close. And again, please join me at adventuresinvisibility.com and have an adventurous day.